On February 2nd of 1882, in the suburb of Rathgar, Ireland, 12 miles south of Dublin, John Joyce and Mary Jane Murray had their first child. This boy would one day stand amongst the great writers in the history of literature. They named him James Augustine Joyce. James' parents were both of noble heritage, despite retaining only limited fortunes. His father was from a family of salt mine owners, while his mother's lineage were financiers. James was the eldest of 10 surviving children, and at the age of 6, after developing a mature and precocious intellect, he was sent to Clongowes Wood boarding school in the pleasant rural area of Kildare, Ireland. At Clongowes, James flourished as a bright and curious student, but after his father gambled and drank the family's fortune away, James was forced to leave the school after 4 years. Then, at the age of 11, James moved to Dublin in order to attend the Jesuit school at Belvedere College. At Belvedere, James was constantly admonished for his precocious intellect and intense curiosity by both priests and nuns, eventually driving him to deny the church and God at the age of 16. Following graduation, James pursued degrees in English, French, and Italian at University College in Dublin, where he first began writing essays and plays at the age of 18. He graduated in the spring of 1903 and immediately set his eyes upon mainland Europe, across the vast ocean, his ideal and free world. Despite yearning to write in Europe, James spent a year in Dublin, struggling to publish short stories and essays, drinking heavily. At 23, he met a hotel maid named Nora Barnacle, immediately eloping with her to Trieste and later Zurich. The couple spent the next 12 years between the two cities, eventually moving with their 2 children to Paris. While in Paris, James met Ezra Pound, a fellow writer and publisher. The two men became good acquaintances and embodied the lost generation of writers like Fitzgerald and Hemingway. Joyce's next 20 years of writing took place in Paris during both World War I and the rise of Nazism and fascism in much of Europe. The vast and varied works of James Joyce are centered around common people and their seemingly ordinary struggles. His focus is on the store owner and office clerk, the bartender and waiter, the tired dock worker and worn-down sailor, the tiny silent and unseen occurrences. His eye is constantly examining the dark corners of pubs and bars, as well as the parades and parties, the dancing in the street, and the many faces in the crowd.
A man and his bride embrace between them, else I'd have folded and sprinkled them only. And I'll tie my butcher's apron here, it suit yet the strollers.
Stephen Dedalus is known as Joyce's most famous and loved character, as he embodies the author's own adolescent struggle with education, religion, and growing up. Leopold Bloom, the observer of Ulysses' broad and humorous events, is a parallel to Odysseus in the Odyssey, as he notes many characters over the course of one day. James Joyce achieved notable fame following the publishing of Dubliners in 1912. After this, he was sponsored for the remainder of his life by retired publisher Harriet Shaw Weaver. As he turned 50, Joyce was plagued with intense eye spasms and migraines. In 1940, while struggling in his 16th year of writing Finnegan's Wake, James was forced to flee Paris and escape the Nazi invasion of France. Returning to Zurich, he underwent surgery for a perforated ulcer which went catastrophically wrong, forcing him into a coma. 2 days later, on January 13, 1941, he briefly awoke for 15 minutes, but eventually relapsed before his family could arrive.